Hey, hey,
Hey, what's up, fellas?
what's
Hey
happening?
guys, how's it going?
Going
Oh,
good. How about you guys?
it's going.
Going pretty good. It's
Everybody's
it feels like it's burnout time, you know.
Oh
everybody's
man.
full of energy. It looks like tonight.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely whipped.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Right now I'm on. Let me see here. Well, I'll just go from 5. So that's what saying. This is what hour 15 of the day for me. So yeah, it's fun. I wouldn't be any other place right now though.
We're
So
here. That's
exactly. Yes.
it's easy to just want to pack it in, take the night off and all that, but we're here and looking forward
Uh
to
oh.
talking about bees with everybody.
Well,
Absolutely. It always gives us some energy. I always feel, it's like a shot in the arm with this community to get on here and talk
yeah.
to you guys and interact with the people in the chat and just it's always a uplift every week. So I'm good to see you
Ian
Absolutely.
guys.
Ian said he was looking for a bee chat, and I just figured I'd throw this at him. You know, you sure this is bee related? We might just talk about Starlink. See there. See, we're going to
Ancient
talk about Greg.
aliens. I
See,
mean,
Starlink, ancient alien civilizations, or Kraken, because
we're
it'll
more than
soon be
just beekeepers.
exactly. It'll soon be Kraken season for Ian.
Oh my gosh, can you
So,
imagine?
oh
I mean, there's
man,
probably already a foot of snow up there.
Man.
I thought there was about a foot and a half already. So,
Well, it won't be long. You guys are it seems like this is the time of year where like today, I spent a lot of the time going through mating nukes, getting everything cleaned up, seeing just the last of the stragglers, seeing what's doing mite washes and some of the out yards, trying to just get a good, uh, trying to get our bearings, get a good grip on exactly where are we. It's easy to get. You have all the colonies out there. You've pulled honey, you've sold nukes, you sold queens, whatever it is that you do in your context, and then you get to this time of year and you dig in, you dig in, you dig in, and at some point you have to really spend the time to evaluate where in the world are we, how are things actually looking like, not just get a
yeah,
quick snapshot or a quick glimpse, but okay, here's where we are, now what? And that is
yeah,
really hard to figure out a lot of the time, and I'm sure we'll probably get into
yeah.
that. September is that time of month where it is like,
Mm.
holy cow, now what?
Yeah,
Sure.
I know, and it's like I'm thankful that I had the time on Monday to go out and get into the colonies, just because, like you said, September is it's like a such a critical month up here. Um, got a video coming out tomorrow on what I found. So I ended up having something happen that has never happened to me. So I can't give it away though because everybody has to watch it tomorrow. But I did get some more supers on because it's the whatever like people say smelly socks or it's gym season. So
Mm,
the apiary that I'm just so happy about because like when you were up here and you had commented, you're like, it's almost like you hit a certain point in Ohio and everything as far as color, everything just kind of vanished. And we had our rain and we had everything else, in August. And then the last like week we've had nothing but sunshine. Now a little bit of clouds here and there, but now it is literally there are just fields upon fields of flowers. So I walked over just to give it a smell into the farm apiary, and I mean I just rounded the garage where they're at, and I was probably oh gosh, good 20 to 30 feet away there, and I
hmm
mean you just smell it, and I was like wow, and
Really? So you went from not seeing any goldenrod to all of a sudden seeing it and then it being the
and it's
producing
yep,
variety.
and then
Wow, that's interesting.
I went and it was on let me see, Friday, I think it was Friday or Saturday. I forget which day, but it was just within the last few days. I went over and I put some supers on colonies that didn't have them. and I went then on Labor Day, and so they had only been on, I think, like 2 days, and 2 or 3 days, and I just thought, let me check and see, because I could tell walking into the apiary. I mean, I smelled the main apiary from 50 feet away, so you figure went from nothing to boom. I mean, there was such a rich smell, and when I cracked open the one colony that was actually a split from this year, and now I've got supers on it. Um, in the top super, I pulled a middle frame, and there was a patch like this in the top super of
Wow.
nectar, and I was just like, wow. So yeah, and I knew it. I was just waiting for Mother Nature to say, okay, we're going to give you guys, some sunshine, and it's going to be on. So yeah, it's like Mother Nature just flipped that switch, and you got to be on it, or if you end up into a time now where in September where it's so important to just kind of have things situated in the right spot. If they were to get nectar bound this time of year, oh man, it would hurt.
It's
It would hurt.
it's well, I keep saying let's go around the room. Let's go around the screen here. Let's do a 2-minute update of exactly where you are in your bee yard right now, and then let's branch off of that and talk about how the rest of September is looking like. Stan Gore, Texas Friendly Beekeepers, 121 days until a good time bee family
Yes.
reunion. Yeehaw! We're looking forward to it.
Oh yeah.
It's funny. We we've when you get the community back together again, I really believe it's more of a homecoming than it
Yeah.
is a reunion. It really feels like some of these folks that you meet, you've just absolutely known forever. I know tonight we are definitely talking about bees. One thing I do feel like I got to throw in there is that I continue to get calls and messages and emails from folks asking us, they're not seeing us going to the Hive Life conference. We're not on that list of vendors. What's going on? Where are we going? For that, I'd refer back folks to one of those initial videos back on our channel where Cayman was on to kind of make that announcement.
Mhm.
In short, you'll see the StreamTeam, you'll see Nature's Image Farm, you'll see all the familiar vendors that you likely seen last year. We're all going to be at the North American Honeybee Expo in Louisville, Kentucky, January 4th through 6th. So I want to put that announcement out again because a lot of folks, I don't think, got all the early memos. So if you're going to hang out with some of us or the vendors that you've maybe grown to expect at the conference, I would check the vendor lists of the conferences that you're thinking about attending before you purchase those tickets. So I feel like I had to get that announcement out because I can't tell you how many calls and texts I'm still getting, folks who just they're haven't quite picked up all the pieces yet. So
Wow.
there you go, Bruce. Give us your 2-minute update on how's things going for Bruce's Bees down in Dothan, Alabama.
Let me see if I can set my. I'm just kidding.
And
Well,
go.
it's as far as I know, it's going okay. I really haven't been in the bees honestly in about a week and a half, 2.5 weeks. I kind of been bottling up some honey, and I did a video on the honey straw machines from Anthony's Beehive, my most recent video. Anyone who's ever thought about doing honey straws may want to watch that video. There's a couple of nice machines. There's all kinds of ways to do it, but in the video, I showed 3 ways I did it. One, the old-fashioned way, which is very tedious and slow, and then a kind of an intermediate type machine, and then a one that you can really knock out a ton of straws in a hurry. And so go check that out if you're interested in ever doing that. But that was a lot of fun. I put a lot of work into that video last week. And my daughter and son-in-law have been staying with us. They recently moved onto the base here close by where he's going to be training. And so my wife and I we're empty nesters again. So we're kind of trying to get everything organized here at home and get used to that situation again. So just kind of been resting a little bit. Greg, you mentioned earlier, it's just kind of a time of year where it's easy to get a little bit burned out. And I've kind of been there, and now I'm kind of starting to come out of that a little bit. I think I'm down here. I think we're a little bit ahead of you guys probably on that. And so this Friday or this weekend, I plan to, I had a friend that passed away last week, and so I've kind of been involved with that a little bit too. And so just some different things. But this weekend I'll plan on getting out and seeing how the bees are doing, just checking on them and maybe putting some food out to them and just kind of getting back into a little bit. I'm just kind of staying out of them. They've got another couple of weeks of Apivar treatment on them, and then I'll go back and do some follow-up testing. But I'm just not getting in them much. I'm just kind of letting them do their thing and just trying to kind of stay on top of it. And like you said, Greg, trying to figure out a game plan for next year, what we want to do. And I've got some ideas of things I'd like to do. We could talk about that maybe a little bit later with my operation, and just maybe a few different goals than what I've had in the past. And so that's kind of where I'm at. Not a whole lot to report with the bees. Just honestly haven't been in them much the last few days.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure we'll unpack a lot of that, Bruce, and see what the rest of September holds and what that has to do with your plans for next spring. Brian, give us your 2-minute update. How's things going up in Northeast Ohio at Castle Hives?
Oh man, busy. Like I was saying, gosh, well, before I even get to the apiary end, I'm trying to get ready for this Saturday is first flea market that I'm going to do. So I've been, as you see back there, I've got shelves of honey now bottled. So,
Brian, where did you bottle that honey?
Well, so when you go to work and you're going to stay in a hotel for 2 or 3 days, you take 5-gallon buckets of honey with you and you set it all up on the kitchen table. So that way when housekeeping comes in, they see buckets and they see all these jars of honey, and I would have loved to have seen their face when they walked into that room and just looked and thought, what does this person have in this room? So, but yeah, it's right there. It is hotel honey. And I'm just trying to get set for that. I want to have at least like 200 plus jars done. Now, I don't think I'll sell even half of that, but I just want to have that ready. We've been selling some of it actually out of the house. Just I've got signs out, and we've actually had people stopping by just buying honey. So that's kind of nice. So, starting to move some of the spring crop, and moving into the apiary, I've got honey supers on now because we're getting into the fall flow. So I've got 20 some supers out. So even if I fill half of that, I'm going to end up getting, probably another couple 100 pounds. So it'll be Triple C. Thank you so much for that. But it'll be probably the most that I'll ever have harvested in a season. So it's just busy times. I mean, right now you're trying to get things, colonies equalized, and I'm trying to get make sure that all my new queens are doing okay. I've got an update on that tomorrow, but it's just busy. So, Mr. Burns, what is let's see here, 2 minutes. We'll go 2 minutes and 10 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, I get a little long-winded.
In 2 minutes and 10 seconds, what is happening at Nature's Image Farm?
Well, the big thing happening is bucket feeders, mite washes, and starting to get all of the mating nukes cleaned up and figure out how many queens are left, how many queens are out there, and downsizing splits. So bucket feeders, mite washes, queen counts, and downsizing splits. That's kind of where we're at right now. We have gotten absolutely hammered with this dearth, it seems. It's been interesting because we've got some bloom, but not enough nectar yield. And what we're finding is the colonies are they're at that edge where that's like, okay, they're going to fall off the edge of the cliff. Are they hanging on? Are they hanging on? They're just waiting for flow. And so we've got bucket feeders on those ones, trying to get them backfilled. We're seeing the brood nest start to constrict now that there's a little flow coming in. So brood nests are kind of starting to shrink. We're laying the feed on things so they can backfill with feed. We've also had pollen patties on to just make sure they've got what they need just so they can finish the race as strong as they possibly can. So yeah, it's been interesting. I was going to ask you guys, and I'm sure maybe we'll talk about it. I don't know if it's with, I don't know if maybe if Ian is still on here. Um, Ian's had a lot of experience not only with the beekeeping cycles but farming row crops, um, and it seems like the more experience you get, the more in tune you are with all the little nuances. And it feels like for whatever reason this year, I've been almost hyper aware of blooms, and it seems like goldenrod has just been there laughing at us. It's been on, it's been right in our face, but I can't ever remember a year where the blooms have been on for so long and the varieties step up and step up and step up without yield. We're just now getting some really noticeable butterscotch tones in the bee yard, meaning goldenrod's actually coming on. So my question to Ian or anybody else here in the comments who've had enough revolutions with anything, has this year seemed different, or with experience, does everything move in slow motion, which is weird because it seemed like it has been the fastest moving year, but while we're going through it, it almost feels like it's just a slow-mo dance through a lot of these time periods. And I'm not even sure if that even makes any sense, but I'll throw it out there anyways. That's my 2 minutes. I'm probably up, probably over. Cut them off.
No, I think you got about 5 more seconds. So
yeah, I put a little comment in there, folks. If you didn't see it, if you got a question, shoot it to us. I see a couple of folks. It's easier to see if it's either in all caps,
yeah,
and or super chat, super sticker format, so we can just it jumps out at us. So if you want to ask a question, we'll try and get to as many as we can this evening and address them the best way we can. So that'll be great.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got there's a couple like Russell, I got yours. Gary, I got yours. If I say in chat like got it, then I'll start. That way we can get to it. So yeah,
oh,
don't
good
worry.
job. Yeah, I can see that. Got a lot of questions to start. Okay, cool.
Yeah, awesome.
Awesome.
You know, there is a question here from Russell, and I have no experience with this treatment, and I do know that Mr. Burns does have experience with this. And I know that because when I was down at his place one time, he cracked the whip and told me, he was like, Brian, get out there and put this on these hives. So he said it just like that. So didn't even drive me out there. I had to walk like, the 1,100 feet out there to the 1 yard. But yeah, so I'm not sure on this one here, but does Apigard shut down brood or just slow it down?
I would say it slows it down unless you're applying it in a colony that's really small, doesn't have not a lot of ventilation in it. Like if you're applying that to like this is my own personal experience. So if you have better luck with it, I'm not saying this is an absolute because there are none. What I found with 5/5 is you put Apigard on, and not only does it shut the brood down, it shuts the colony down, and they end up absconding. I just didn't have enough ventilation, I don't think, in the 5-frame boxes back when we were running entrance dials on the front and then 1-inch holes on the back with screen. They're you would think there'd be plenty of ventilation, but there wasn't. So yes, it's my opinion that Apigard does indeed really slow down the brood rearing, at least for a solid week. And you'll know that because by the time you get done with your Apigard treatment, usually the instructions vary depending on if you're putting on the foil. That's not really a sachet, but the foil container versus if you were doing it in bulk with the syringe and postcards. But when you get in there 7 to 10 days, if you do have a sneak peek, definitely at 14 days, I noticed a lag because what the brood actually looked like 10 days later, you noticed, well, there was a huge gap. Like you see things were emerging, but you see a timeline variance where you're just not seeing the larva like you would expect. And then you do start seeing eggs again. So it seems like it does slow it down for at least a week, which is why we're always concerned with using Apigard at the wrong time of fall on the wrong size colony, if they are building up and you need them to keep building up to get to that size that you want them to be, ApiGuard can be a little bit tricky because it can shut them down, and sometimes shut them down in the worst part. Like, you know, if you do have a little bit of a flow coming on and you put ApiGuard on, and as that first flow is coming back in, that heavy goldenrod, they will start to keep brooding. But then if you got ApiGuard on at the same time, you're losing your most opportune time for brooding by putting the ApiGuard on. But you have to balance out, what are we going for? Mites, brood? It's a delicate dance, that's for sure. Can be.
Yeah.
Bruce, what about you? Have you had any issues with thymol?
I've only used it last year. I used it about this time of the year, I guess, into September, early October, and kind of like what you said on the good strong colonies, it seemed to slow them down a little bit, but it wasn't like it just shut them down. And Spirited Toad in here has his comments is thymol almost as rough as Formic. I think they actually kind of is almost like a similar type. My small experience with those two products is kind of a similar situation. Formic to me seems to, I used it probably about the same as I did ApiGuard last year. I used this kind of spring, and it kind of runs a lot of the bees out. But after about 3 days, they seem to be right back to work as normal. I don't know that ApiGuard runs the bees out like the Formic does, but I don't know that it's any more or less rough on the bees. I think you just have to use them properly. And I think they both have a similar, or is that your experience, Greg, with Formic and ApiGuard? Is kind of a similar result?
It's a matter of context. Each one can be absolutely brutal to the wrong size colony.
That's right.
At the wrong temperatures. I have learned how to run bees out using actually Oxalic, Formic, and ApiGuard. So knowing the temperature ranges, the size colonies, the ventilation that they need is a big deal. Great question, because it is. It's that time of year.
It's that time of year.
Yeah. September is just.
Yeah, I kind of like using, and I know there are different opinions on Apivar. I've had really good luck with it in the past. I kind of like using it this time of the year because it doesn't tend to knock the brood back this time of the year when you want them to build up. Has been my experience. You can use it in the heat, which we are still pretty hot here. It's just we're starting to get a little bit of relief, but I think there's another heat wave coming possibly. But it was brutal for most of August. But I do like Apivar for that reason, because it's not temperature sensitive really. You can just stick it in there, and I've never noticed any issues with really brood loss or any problems. I know some people just swear that it doesn't work, but I've never experienced that. And some people say it works great. So I don't know if it has anything to do with mite resistance, if they have built up a resistance to it, or I'm not sure why that is, but I've had pretty darn good luck with it. Really, with pretty much all the treatments, I've had pretty good luck with them. If you do them right, they seem to be pretty effective in my experience.
Do you have any thoughts on Amitraz and using a synthetic miticide in your colonies?
You mean like Amitraz, Apistan, that kind of stuff?
Apivar, yeah.
Well, Apivar it basically is Amitraz. I think it's the Amitraz is the base for it. And I have used the off-label stuff, the Amitraz. I've done that in the past, and it works. I mean, it's it's kind of the same stuff. It's just a different application. But I'm trying. This year I've done all the stuff per packaging and I purchased it. And I don't have any issues at all with it. I've never had issues with it. It honestly seems like a fairly mild treatment. It doesn't seem to affect the bees at all in any negative way, in my experience, that I can tell.
I feel like I'm late to the game because I think I'm the only one on the screen who just can't get over it. Yeah, and maybe I'll have to, because I do think that Amitraz is the right tool for the toolbox in a lot of circumstances. Whether or not bees are building resistance to it, I'm so darn apprehensive on using a synthetic miticide versus something that's considered an organic compound. But at the end of the day, we need bees to be healthy. Of course, we're monitoring bees that we feel like maybe are doing it on their own and intentionally not treating those as part of the breeding program. But I don't know.
I think that Bob Benny was talking about the Apistan. I guess the basic ingredient in that the bees have really. My understanding is they've really developed a resistance the mites have to the Apistan, and also, if I'm not mistaken, it tends to collect in the wax significantly, especially if it's combined. I think Greg, you mentioned something else if it was combined with, but I don't think that Apivar is. I don't know. I don't think it has that effect. I could be wrong, but I've never had any issues at all. I see Tim Morris says he used it for 2 years, and this year it was like I never treated. So I guess I'll just have to. See how it looks here in a few weeks. But I didn't have a horrible problem when I treated. I mean, I had pretty low counts because I jumped on them early this year, pretty good. So my counts that I tested weren't that bad anyway. So, but we'll see. We'll see if it knocks them down. I've always had. There always seems to be a colony or two, whatever the treatment is, that doesn't have a great result for some reason with these products. I'm not sure why. We get knockbacks on everything, but some colonies it just seems like they still have some mites in them after the treatments. But most of them it seems to really knock them out. If you got a colony that has 30 mites in a wash and then you get it down to 6, that's a pretty good knockdown.
It's subjective for sure.
It is subjective, but if you can keep them down in a reasonable amount, I use these treatments kind of just clean them up for the most part. Hopefully, I don't ever have any. I want to avoid those that have just tons of mites in them. But it's a work in progress, and everybody's got their products. Everybody's got like you said, Greg, you use the term the tool in the toolbox. That's exactly what these products are. We're not, there's nothing that you should use all the time and that be it, in my opinion. You should just try the different things and figure out a pattern and a system that works for you. And if it stops working, then mix up the timing of them. So the treatments and do some things a little different. Just try some different things. And so, I don't think there are no absolutes, Greg. That's one of your terms that you like to use.
Yeah.
Some people swear that Formic killed all their bees. And I'm like, well, if you had that experience, there's, 95% of the people, a lot of people out there are having fine results with Formic. Maybe it's just not the product for you, but that doesn't mean it's going to kill my bees, if that makes sense. And so
I think part of the problem, though, why people bash Formic or just they say Formic was responsible for killing my bees is I see it all the time, and I see it on a lot of the blogs and different pages and groups where people ask on there, they're like, how should I use Formic? What should I do with Formic? Instead of going to a Facebook group or instead of going to some blog, why not just pick up the actual box
instructions,
that has the instructions on it?
Absolutely.
And that's where people run into problems is they do not follow the instructions for the product they're using.
That's right. And you can find that. Like I've had people asking me about Apigard on my YouTube channel from last year. I guess people are looking for mite treatments right now. And I've had some questions on my Apigard video from last year, like how do you use this, how often? And so I've actually gone and found the directions online and just sent them a link because it's like frequently asked questions about Apigard, and it has all these questions that people ask. They're all answered. I mean, I guess they all have questions. Hey, can you put up the question from Nick Zooks right there about the that one? 7:30 hit my hives with Formic, and 9:05 I'm finding mite washes with 3 to 10 mites. Going to treat with Formic again and hope for the best. So I guess my question for Nick would be, and maybe Nick you could put in the comments, what were your mite washes before you treated?
Great question.
Then? So if it was like if your mite washes were, it's just hard to know. Got to know what the results were then. And obviously they're going to build up some over time, but if you had them knocked back to 1 or 2, and they've increased to 3 to 10 and the hives are strong, that wouldn't be completely out of the realm of possibility. But if they went from 20 to 3, or whatever, that's not bad. So if you did a pre-test, that would help give you a better idea of how well it worked. And then it looks like you did do night washes here, I guess, yesterday. And so it'll be a good test for you to see how it works if you do it again, here when you take the treatment off in a couple of weeks. So that's a great question, but you got to know what it was before and after to be able to figure out if it's working or not.
I think that this is a really important question. I don't have the answers, so I'm going to say I don't know. But let's brainstorm on this, fellas. July 30th, Nick used Formic. 9/5 did a wash, and it's got 3 to 10 mites. Let's assume that was a 300 mite sample. So he's at somewhere between a 1 and a little over 3% ratio. Like Bruce said, if the mite counts were that before he started and that was where he ended up, we've got a problem here. that we need to sort through the application, ventilation, too much ventilation, the screen bottom boards. Um, we've had Nick here at the shop. He's a great guy. He knows what he's doing. He raises queens and nukes. So I'm assuming he is also smart enough to read the instructions. So I'm going to assume here that he either had a mite count that was the same or maybe a little higher. But the question is, after a round of Formic, he's still got a high mite count, or he's got a mite count that's actionable to him. Now, what do you do? This is where this gets tricky, because I think there are, you fellows are in the medical industry. What's the terminology you use? You can't overlap a product on top, like a withhold period. I don't know if you can go Formic and then go Apigard, but if it was July 30th and now we're in September, I think you've had enough time there to be able to not have any kind of a synergistic reaction.
I think so.
Okay.
I think it will tell you maybe on some of the products too, don't add honey supers for X number of weeks and things like that. And it's always good to leave the products off for a little while, especially if it's not supposed to be on there with honey. And so I would assume, and this is, once again, you should never trust someone who assumes something, but I would assume that if you give it a little time, it should be okay. That's just
so Nick says 1 to 12 mites before I treated, but an average of 7 to 8. Okay. The average is important there. So he knocked him back in half, which is great. I don't think I would let it ride personally.
I think you need to jump on it.
I think you need to get on it. And boy, here for the StreamTeam field day and creator convergence, we'll have Tom Nolan from Not Apiaries will be down to answer these questions. Nick, I know you're part of the Learning Yard crowd here, so I would definitely try to stop out on the 16th, and you can actually talk with Tom personally and ask some questions about Formic and what to do. If Tom listens to this, and if he does this question, Tom, text me, and I'll get this information to Nick, whether you can piggyback treatments, and if so, what the withholding or the withholding period would be. I would think you're in the clear to add another treatment on. Whether you go Formic or you go Apigard is the question. That's a whole conversation.
I actually asked Tom a question about Formic when I was treating before, and I had a hive that was just loaded up with mites, and after the Formic, it had knocked them way back, but they weren't down where I needed them. And I don't think I actually did this, but he told me if I needed to hit them, I could again, but I just, because they were laying up a beautiful brood pattern. It's kind of, the Formic is interesting to me because it, like, they say if you go in there a week, I think this is what Tom said, if you go in there a week after you apply it, everything looks kind of like a mess in there. But if you wait the 2 weeks that are on the package and you go in and you start seeing that beautiful brood pattern being laid up, and that's exactly what I experienced. I had some colonies that were pretty weak, and they were spotty brood, and I don't know what it looked like after a week because I didn't go in there. But when I went after 2 weeks, man, the brood patterns were just straightened out in some of those colonies. So it's like it just kind of reset the colonies. It seemed like a little bit to me. So.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what not, like I say, I'm not the most experienced person with Formic. I used it, once this past spring, and it did a pretty good job for me. And anyway, there's a video from me back in I think it was in February, maybe. I did a video where Tom came down here to Alabama actually and hung out with me for a day. We went through bees, and then we sat down and did an interview discussing the Formic. And hey, man, we probably went about 20 or 30 minutes, and I just hit him with all the questions that all you guys probably have, because I've had them. And I was actually scared to use Formic because down here in the South it gets so hot, but we went through it, and I really, it relieved my fear or my reservations a little bit, and I tried it and seemed to have good results with it. No worse results than anything else as far as the damage to the colonies or the brood, drawback or the queen loss or anything like that. I didn't seem to have any more of that than I did with the Apigard. Now, I find oxalic acid vapor and Apivar to be pretty easy on the bees, but if you're going to use a harsh chemical, harsh product like Formic or Apigard, it's going to be pretty, it's going to be pretty tough on them. But if it cleans them up, sometimes they need that reset, I think. And so,
Mm-hmm.
I've had good results with everything I've used for the most part. I haven't had, really bad results with anything.
The tail end of that string of thoughts is we're getting in and see we're the 1st of September. I mean, we're getting into winter baby making mode. So
Mm-hmm.
the thing to consider is if you're at 1 to 3% now, September, October is when might they explode. And so what might be 1 to 3 now could be 2 to 6. You could be back to where you started going into the winter time. And you stand to have some troubles with that colony perking up and doing what you would like it to in the spring. So maybe the mindset would be get them squeaky clean now while you have time to combine or requeen versus letting them rather than being too hesitant on a treatment and then having them get out of hand in the wintertime and then crash and then have a mess to clean up.
Man, what a great question, though. I know that's a
great
big concern for a lot of people out here.
And I was just looking at the temps. Now, I know Nick is down closer by you.
Yeah, he's up in Sunbury, just north of me. We're going to get a break in the weather next week, it looks like.
Yeah. Well, and I'm looking at the weather, at least up here, Northeast Ohio. Now, today we hit almost 90, so today would not have been a good day to mess with formic. But after this, we've got, and this is our highs, 79, 73, 76, 73, 76, 72. And our lows are 64, 60, 60, 56.
Oh, yeah.
6.
You're right.
That's perfect. So
tomorrow, let's see. Well,
yeah.
No one can you probably can't read. Let's see. This is probably annoying to even try to see this. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, it looks beautiful.
And that's
nice.
Yep.
80 is the high over the next.
That's perfect.
Gosh,
lows in the
60s.
Lows in the 60s looks
lows
like
in the 60s.
Yep.
I mean that is prime formic weather.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I think we'll be shooting a video. Hopefully, we get it out in some kind of a timely manner. But we'll be going through. We're doing a lot of mite washes. We have a lot of colonies that are actually only washing 0 to 3 mites in a 300 mite sample. Those aren't getting treated at all. And matter of fact, a lot of these are colonies that we're specifically monitoring for a breeding program. So those ones, I will let those, if those crash in the wintertime, that's okay. Because for these specific subset of colonies, that is the goal, is to see, okay, who has the lowest counts? Let's earmark those. Who can get through the wintertime, who's had a good crop this year, and how they build in the spring. And those are the ones that we'll graft and specifically use for artificial insemination in the springtime. So if you're not doing all that, I would definitely encourage you to keep the bees clean so you've got material and bulk bees to work with in the spring. But man, it looks like the weather's going to be perfect for formic.
Yeah.
Hey, Brian, quick. Nick Six also put one on there at 737. I think I need to start treating sooner. Can you pop that one up there? I think this right here is the key. This is what I tried to do this year. See it up there. I need to start treating sooner. Last year, I think I need to start treating. Last year, I got away with treating only once, but I wonder if I'm missing knocking the mice down in June. That's I think, we had Ian on back early in the year, and for a chat, and he talked about just getting those mites knocked back, getting them knocked back early in the year and getting them down as low as you can. And we had a pretty good discussion about different products and what to use. And I think that's a great philosophy or thought pattern. If you can get them knocked back early, then you might not have that spike in, June, July, August, just stay on top of it. And so then you don't have to be trying to rescue your bees in August, September, right before winter bees. And Stan Gore talked earlier. He put a comment up about how it's important to, those virus loads that those mites bring is what the real issue is. Or you got to have sick bees going into winter and they have to live longer. That's the problem that people run into is I think so many people think I got to get through honey season and then I'll treat. But I think the problem is if you do that, that's the big dilemma. That's the big problem is if you do that, then you're going to have a spike in August when you need to be starting to make the bees that are going to make the winter bees, if that makes sense. So you want to get that mite load down by the time you get the honey supers off, they need to be treated so that you can have healthy bees, virus-free bees, I think is the philosophy going into, July, August, September, October, when they're making those winter bees. And so it's still a work in progress. And there's a lot of, there's so many ways to do it in different things, but I think that's the key, is to knock them back early.
Yeah.
Keep them low, try to keep them low, and don't let them spike in that, late summertime frame.
I got one thing to throw out there, and I promise I'm not going to go long because I could. One thing to consider is I see a lot of folks they've talked about in the comments here that they haven't treated or they don't treat. That's totally cool. But what I would encourage folks to think about is that there was a time where if we didn't treat, the bees just wouldn't make it for whatever reason, whether it was they didn't have the viral resistance. There was other contributing factors to their overall health, and that was just one more thing added on, a death by 1,000 cuts. What I want to relay to folks is because that we took responsibility for the livestock, which are the bees on the farm, and treated them, we had bees to work with in the spring. And every year we continue to breed from the ones that either had the lowest mite counts, didn't need treatments, and met all the criteria. Year after year and after year of doing that, we're now starting to see the fruits of our labor because we treated early on. It gave us the opportunity to actually have the bees to continue to monitor rather than waiting for a magic bee to pop up and you adapt that magic bee scenario and through your entire bee yard. That's great if you've got 20 colonies and you think you can replicate that. But if you're growing your bee yard and you're looking at needing numbers to fulfill whatever need you have for those bees on the farm, by treating, it gave us the opportunity to actually have the bulk numbers to continue to do the work and fine tuning the genetics to get us to the point where now for us to find zeros this time of year on colonies that we haven't treated, that's a big deal. And if we hadn't taken responsibility for the bees early on over the last several years, I don't think we would be in that situation, because we would be in a position where we didn't have the stock to continue to refine and choose the best of the best every single year.
Yeah.
Makes total sense. That's what.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Let's see here. Let's get another question. DC had a question here about temps, but we already spoke about what our temps are. It's going to be. I would love to work in the apiary any of these days where it's in the 70s. And
good question, DC. So Greg, what are your nighttime temps like this year? My nighttime temps have been cooler this summer. We've had, it seems like everything is just it's a little goofy. We've had weeks where it's been high 70s, early, lower 80s, and then we have weeks where we're 92 to 99 degrees, and it just flip flops week after week after week. So there hasn't been anything normal about the highs and the lows. We had some that were so cool. When you're getting late into the season is when you hop in the truck at night or first thing in the morning and you just can't figure out which defrost temp do I need to keep the windshield from fogging, because it is so warm or cool outside and vice versa on the inside of the truck. It's that time of year where everything, when the sun goes down, dusk and dawn, the ground's soaking wet, dew is falling, the saturation point is it's changing. And that's kind of a big deal as you then look at the tree leaves. The leaves are turning colors. We have leaves that are starting to fall. It's goofy. And the next week, as our high over the next 7 days is 80, which is tomorrow, we're going to be getting into nighttime temps where we're going to be in the 50s, and it is really going to feel like fall. And so we're going to be just catapulted into that cool season part of the season where there will be a lot of us who are going to be standing in the middle of our bee yard with a cool breeze going across. The leaves are just going to be shimmering and shaking. One or two are going to start falling off. We're going to start seeing those early signs of fall, and we're going to be thinking, oh man, are we ready or not? Ready or not? Here it comes,
Yeah, it's that time,
We had someone put a comment about someone actually looked up it on Nod It says allow a minimum, as Karen, allow a minimum of 1 month between applications. I guess the formic. Do not
1
mix
month
with
for
other,
formic.
do not mix with other miticides. High mite infestations may require more than one treatment. So that's pretty.
Okay, perfect.
She
That's
quoted
great.
that.
Thanks, Karen.
Yeah, thanks, Karen.
Yeah,
She quoted that
that's
from the
perfect.
instructions.
So 1 month. So based on that criteria, I would definitely cruise through those instructions and just make sure there's nothing else that pertains to you. But it sounds like you'd be in the clear. I think and the question, and thanks for the super chat, Nick. The question was, he's got Apigard and Formic. Which one? He has both on hand. What would you use? I think if it were me, I would take advantage of the cool weather. I'd hit him with the Formic again. It looks like the instructions say you're clear to do that. So, and then save the Apigard for something else that you might need there.
Yeah.
Good questions.
Any other? What else do we have, Brian? How to manage?
Get this one here.
This is a good one. This is a
Gary,
good one.
Yeah. How to manage prepare horizontal hive for a mild winter. Man. Well,
what do you think, Brian?
So, Gary, I ran horizontal hives 1 year, and I had issues with mine where, as far as preparing them for the winter, I basically did nothing different than what I did to my regular Langstroths. Now, mine did not make it through the winter. So whether there's, if there's anything special that is required for that type of a hive setup, I don't know. I was never able to overwinter one of them. What happened with mine, and they had plenty of stores, they got locked. So where mine were facing south, my cluster got locked at the top and in the front of a frame, and they basically just shrunk down to nothing until they froze and they couldn't move around. They got landlocked right there. So if there's anything special that you have to do, I don't know what it is. I know that, I would imagine that Ricky Rourke would probably have some tips on this, since he does manufacture some wonderful horizontal hives. Fred Dunn, I know, has some that he's taken through several winters, and he's northwestern Pennsylvania. So I know some others would be able to offer some tips on the horizontals. Greg, I know you have yours. What can you offer for Gary?
Well, the worst piece of guidance I could offer is the top bar hive, which we literally threw a package at just to ingest. And not only did those darn Georgia package bees, not only did they thrive here in Ohio, they made it through the winter in a top bar without me touching them. They got 1 round of maybe 2 rounds of oxalic acid. That was it. And it wasn't really in the most ideal time either. And those, to use Bruce's favorite word, those jokers are, they are wall to wall so moist, where I'm like, okay, fine, you guys want to swarm, do it, I dare you. And they're just cruising. So in that instance, I did nothing. In my other horizontals, I kind of use those a lot differently, because I use those a lot for as cell starters, for making splits, for making nukes, having backup queens always on hand. The Queen Castle nuke, or the Queen Castle horizontal, that has 12 compartments in it. I think I've ran at least 3 cycles of queens through that. So that their goal was 36 queens. They did it. They're done. The Lighthouse colony was the same situation, where they grew out. We split them. We made queens. And then now I've used them as a cell starter. Right now they're intentionally queenless. Tomorrow I'll do the very last round of grafting. We'll go into that Lighthouse colony, and then they'll build up, and that's pretty much it. So the reason I give you the back history on all of that is that horizontal hive has had enormous brood breaks over and over and over and over again. We've demonstrated for folks how to use oxalic acid using the instant VAP on it. And so when I go to wash them, I would expect to have low numbers that I really wouldn't worry about. However, last year, Horizontal hives get to be challenging for treating because they are not really set up to take on very many treatments. Matter of fact, I was talking with some folks after a club meeting last night about this. With a horizontal hive, if you have it like one of Ricky's and Ruth's from Horizontal Bees, you'll have a 1/4 inch or so above the top of your frames, where you've got a gap between the top of your frame and the bottom of your inner cover. It does give you a little bit of room to where you could put an ApiGuard treatment on, and we have, and it did work. The trouble with it is, though, is a lot of those are based on Langstroth equipment to where you're stacking them up, and you're putting the ApiGuard at the very top of the colony. They're dragging it down and through and out, and that's, I think, how that mechanism works. And a horizontal, when you're growing out this way, where do you put that treatment? You're going to put it closer to, you got to put it really over where the brood is and have them drag it out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how effective it really is. Formic, in my opinion, isn't even an option at all because you don't have any room for the acid to have vertical lift and draft, and there's no ventilation for the bees. So I would highly encourage you to really take a good hard look at if Formic is the correct product on a horizontal. We'd have to do some experimenting, and I don't even know if Tom has any feedback. Tom Nolan has any feedback, but we can ask him when he's here at the field day. That's where you get into maybe using one strip at a time, but still, I don't know that I'm not sure I would risk one strip on a horizontal, which leads us to the conversation we had earlier, Bruce, which was using Amitraz or Apivar. So using Apivar, that strip going right in between the frames, right where the brood is at, seems to be pretty ideal for that situation because you don't need all that extra vertical lift for ventilation, at least not that I'm aware. I've seen it used in nukes boxes a lot. So
yeah, you can use that, or you can use, the Apivar is pretty simple. It's just one strip for 5 frames of bees, basically, right there in the middle of the brood. So it's pretty simple, straightforward. But you can also do oxalic acid through the entrance as well. You can do that. So those are a couple of treatments you have with horizontals. But I got a question for you, Greg, because it's my first year with a horizontal. I had that queen from you that I got last year that it just blew up into that thing and filled that whole thing up. I think it was 32 frames were in there.
Wow.
But now I haven't actually been in it. I haven't been in that colony probably in 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks. And it was starting to contract back. They're starting to kind of contract and come back to the middle of the colony. The entrance is in the middle. So I guess my question is, I guess you just continue to take the frames out, condense that space down as they condense back. Is that what you would do to manage the space in that colony? I'm not really sure how to manage with boxes stacked up, you just take a box off, but with a horizontal, I'm not sure how you manage the condensing and the expanding of the space.
Yeah. Horizontals are a little different because you don't quite, I personally don't use any upper entrances. I don't use upper ventilation on any of my colonies out there other than whatever you might see in 5-frame nuke boxes raised for queens. And all the overwintered stuff, all the production colonies, they're boxes on 4 ways with migratory lids. But when you look at that, the reason I bring it up is when you look at it, the brood is usually in a certain area of the box for the most part, either in the center or typically I see them leaning more towards the entrance side of a box if you've got a staggered entrance. So for the most part, it seems as though if I let them figure it out themselves, the brood is not necessarily directly in front of the entrance. It's offset just a little bit, a few frames offset, and then they'll start backfilling with honey on either side. And a horizontal, it gets to be a little bit tricky because if the bees move to one side or the other, and that's where the honey is, if they do run out, how are they going to travel back to the other side to get to the honey? So one mindset is have all of the brood on one side of the colony and stagger the honey in one direction and hope that they just keep moving to honey, moving to honey, moving to honey. I don't know that I've got a really good answer for that. But what I have liked in the past is not even worrying about that so much. Let them consolidate the brood nest. They best know what that airflow feels like for them, what they need. What I like about those horizontal bees, the hives from horizontal bees, is with those inner covers, there's enough room to put some fondant on. So I can layer fondant and I can chase right on top of the brood wherever they move and make sure that they've got a couple pounds of feed. and I feel like they're squared away that way.
Yeah, David Lewis, I think, has horizontals, and he has a comment. He said, "Brood
Mhm.
towards the entrance on his." A lot of people with the long hives, I've noticed, probably a majority of the ones I've seen have the entrance on one end or the other, or near one end or the other, and so it seems like the bees can build from the end back.
Mhm.
But on the one I have, Ricky set it up so I've got room for a nuke on each end if I want that, and then the entrance is in the middle, the main entrance, and so just different ways to do it. It worked beautifully, but now I'm just kind of trying to figure out what I need to do. But I like the idea of the fondant. You can take the inner cover out if you want to and put fondant in there, which is what I did last year. Kept them alive through the winter, actually, that
Right.
little nuke we put in there. So
Hmm.
those are just some ideas, guys. I've actually had people asking me a little bit about management. I've had a couple of people comment on that horizontal bees video I did, and I might just see if I can get a hold of Ricky and just maybe get some sort of interview or something with him to find out what his recommendations are. I know Joey Rawls down in Louisiana also uses horizontals, and there's a few people that I've had comment on my videos that use horizontals, and so they've all got great ideas and they all have success, or they wouldn't use them
Mhm.
probably. So it's just something I don't have much experience at all with. This is my first year, and they're starting to kind of condense way back. And so
Mhm.
I don't really know. I guess I can just take the frames out and move the following boards in and just condense them down, kind of like you would condense a Langstroth hive top to bottom. You just condense them in like this. And so
Mhm.
I still want to have, 32 frames in there that are, if half of them are empty, and then have wax mouth and things like that get in there. So I'll just pull those frames out,
Mhm.
move the following boards in, and you
Well,
just got to
if you,
keep kind of watching.
well, think about it in a regular colony. In a regular Langstroth, when you're going into
Mhm.
winter, and let's say a story or a story and a half, yeah, they burn up through some resources, but they're not leaving 10 or 20 empty frames that they're not attending to. It is
Yeah.
some, but it's not the whole entire thing. So I
Mhm.
think if you're at the point where you have, if they've already consolidated to, let's say, I'm just going to throw a number out, but let's say they're somewhere between 10 frames
Mhm.
or 14 frames. What I would do is, first thing I would do is bring that divider board over and
Mhm.
just shut them up wherever they're at now,
Mhm.
and just lay the feed to them. Make sure they backfill any nook and cranny they can with feed, and then
Mhm.
just kind of put fondant right on top of them.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do.
But another thing, what's also different is context is key. You fellows that are down south where it's a little bit warmer through the winter, you can get in there and actually pull frames out.
That's right.
Our buddy Tennessee Tim gave me an invention of his, where it's kind of like um, a hardware cloth insulated frame where you could put fondant in it, and it
Mhm.
only takes the footprint of a one frame width, and then drop it right down and put it right on top of the colony if you needed to in an emergency kind of a situation. So if you didn't have room on top, maybe you could do something like that.
Mhm.
Um, but the main thing is having on your horizontals, you really got to have the room above the frames. So if you want to put a pollen patty, or if you want to put a treatment, or if you want to put a fondant or anything, you've got headroom to do it. So.
Okay. Good stuff.
Mhm.
Hey Brian, did you start the question from Carol McCarthy about the honey stick machine?
Now, Bruce, I did.
Well, yeah,
Just
knew
because
I was
I'm
going
gonna,
to ask.
just because I live in that state with them Buckeyes, it doesn't mean I slip up that much.
Well,
See.
all right, Carol. Question is, Bruce, do you feel like doing the honey straws is worth doing? How do you all price your honey? So, um, when it comes to honey straws, I've been making honey straws now for probably 3 to 4 years. I've just done them the old-fashioned way. If you watch the video you saw at the beginning where I
Mhm.
squeeze it with the dispenser, each individual straw, I got to where I could do two at a time pretty well with the impulse sealer. And I've done thousands of straws that way. It's just very tedious. It takes a long time to do it. And, but it's been worth it. I mean, you figure, my pricing on the honey sticks, and I know I'm real careful when I talk about pricing of honey because it is just different depending on where you're at. So what I'm doing in Alabama, you might be able to sell it for more or less wherever you're at. But what I do is if I sell them retail, if someone just wants a straw or 10 straws from me, it's $1 a piece. If I sell them, if they want to buy more than that, what people usually do is they buy a minimum of 50 from me, and I make some for 40 cents a piece. I may go up to 50 cents a piece on that. And
Wow.
I sell to a couple stores around here, and they buy them 50 a time, and they sell them for $1 a piece, I think, or whatever. So there's a really good profit margin for me and for them. And you can get, I think, I don't know exactly how many straws are in a pound, but I think it's probably 60 to 70 straws or more per pound. And so the issue that you have, that I have making honey straws, is that using the impulse sealer and just filling them up one or two at a time, it just is so time consuming. So, money, dollars per hour, I'm not making much because it just takes so long to do it. I don't mind if I'm watching a ball game or watching a show or something on TV, just sitting there and filling them up and doing it. The reason I wanted to get a machine was because I haven't really sold a lot of them because I just hesitated to even market that I had them because it was so much work to make them. But now that I have that machine, I can knock out, with that big Gold Rush machine, it's 40 straws at a time. And of course, I've only done I think 4 runs with that thing, which is 160 straws. And so I'm trying to figure it out still. But I think that, I talked to Tony about it, the creator of the machine. And I think he said that you can get to where you can do it in about 10 minutes per run by the time you fill the machine up, spin it, and seal it. And so when you look at that, if you think that's, looking at probably 240, 240, 250 straws in an hour when you're really fast. If you have 2 people doing it, it would go way faster. So if you want to do a lot of straws, the machine is fairly expensive, but if you have places you can sell those straws, you can take them to sell them at gas stations, whatever the laws are, whatever it is in your state. I know it's different, but like all these little, I think all the little vegetable stands around here, little farmers markets and stuff, you can just set them out there and people will buy them for $1 a piece. What some of my stores do is they put them right there by the cash register. So it's kind of like the candy, in the stores where they have candy right there. It's kind of the same. It's like an impulse buy, and it's $1, and so people will buy them that way. And they've sold hundreds of my straws out there. That's at Apple Farms. And so, but I think it's worth it, but it is a kind of a high dollar item. So, but the honey stream machine, the smaller machine, is a brand new product that Tony's son Adam created. They're both purchased through honeystickfiller.com, and it's a much more affordable product. The shipping is free on that thing. And so what I would do if I was starting all over again, I ended up with both machines. I paid full price. I'll tell you what I did. Full disclosure, I paid full price for the big machine, and then they sent me the small one to try out so I could kind of try both of them. And I think if I was just going to get into doing honey straws, I think I would buy the small machine if I was just trying to figure out if I want to do it or not, and just try that out for a while, because it's way easier than doing it this way, the manually. And then if you like it, if you get a market for it, you could always splurge on the bigger machine later, kind of like buying extractors or anything else. That would be my recommendation to someone just trying to get into it. It's really reasonably priced for someone that's interested in getting into it. I think it's worth it, but you need to get your market, make sure you have a market for it. But honey straws are not hard to sell. People just need to know you have them. So if you go to the honeystickfiller.com, if you put in the code Bruce10, Bruce 10, it's a 10% discount for you. That's kind of a deal that worked out with me. And I will tell you this too about the Gold Rush machine, the bigger machine right there that's on the screen. Anthony has been working on this machine for years. Tony has, and it took a long time to make them. They were kind of hard to get a hold of, but now he has that process streamlined, and so he can get you the product much quicker at this point in time than he could previously. So if you've tried to order it before, if you've had issues, they supposedly have that kind of rectified, and they can get it out to you a lot quicker than they could before. So I've been trying to get one of these machines, actually, to be honest, for a couple of years, and just could never get one. But now they've got it streamlined. They've been working on it. And so that's just a little history on the honey straw machines and how that whole thing came about behind the scenes. And so anyway, to answer your question, Carol, I think it's worth it, but you need to have a market for it. And so I would start off with something smaller to begin with, and then build up. And if you really get a big market for it, that big machine is phenomenal. That Joker, there's that word. That thing is awesome.
Bruce, if folks wanted to take that machine for a spin and wanted a sweet deal, what's the discount code they can use?
Bruce 10. It's all together, all one word. Yeah, Bruce 10. And I don't think the caps or no caps matter. I think it just needs to be Bruce 10, all on one word right there, all together. But
so it's funny that you say a honey stick is $1 in down south. When I was at the fair this last weekend,
it's $2 or $3.
No.
Oh, okay.
4 for $1.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I just, good for them.
Wow.
If you sell a bunch of them, it's worth that. But I don't
Yeah.
want to sell them for that.
The difference is how we should be pretty clear is last thing I need is you'll find a lot of times when you're seeing flavors like strawberry and watermelon and peach mango and pina colada and blue raspberry razzmatazz and all those things too, a lot of those ones aren't what you would consider the local beekeeper making the honey straws. Those are imported in from packers.
That's right.
Right? Those are the ones that are typically sold for $1. And it's my opinion, not the ones maybe that are necessarily sold from the actual beekeeper who is actually making the straws. However, I'm sure there's an exception to every rule, but usually if you see flavors like blue razzmatazz and pina colada, probably not the beekeeper making those ones. They're probably ordering them in like that.
That is a really good point, because I've had a lot of people, and I thought this before I figured out how to make them. I thought you had to order them in. I think a lot of people just order them already pre-made. There is a huge honey stick distributor, I think, somewhere. I'm not sure where it is, but they make just like probably millions of them. I've just heard the story because it is such a tedious thing to do. I think a lot of people just order those, but mine are just my honey. I put them in there and that's it.
Yeah.
And so it's, and I don't think they have any issues at these farmers markets and stuff like it at Appling Farm selling for $1 a piece. It just works out well. Second part of that, go ahead, Brian.
I'm probably I sat watching your video with my wife, and she kept looking over like this at me, and she's like, "You're going to get one of those things." I said, "No, I'm not." She goes, "You're sitting here. How long have you been watching that video, and you've rewound it, and you're like, hey, look at this, and you're sitting here shoving that thing in my face." She said, "You're going to buy one of those." I said, "No, I'm not." She goes, "Yeah, there's going to be a box coming to the house, and you're going to have this little honey straw, honey stick machine." I said, "No, but."
You've got it.
It's just us. It's just us here. Nobody else is watching.
Oh, no. Oh, gosh. Hope Tara's not watching this.
Right. She's downstairs. She's probably sleeping. After I get my bottling tank, the next purchase after that is going to be that honey stick machine.
Yeah.
Because, oh, look at this. Hey, blue razzmatazz. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes, it's fine. But anyway, I want to address something else about the honey sticks. And this is kind of once again, it's a controversial point about honey sticks. I use plastic straws, and there are a lot of people out there who feel like using plastic straws is like the worst thing you could ever do. Environmental people that are concerned about that. And I will tell you this, I use straws at restaurants. I use straws all the time. And I just think about how much plastic is in the dashboard of a car, probably even an electric car. There's a lot of plastic out there. I know it is an issue and it's a problem, but I don't have an issue with this. And the straws that they send from honeystickfiller.com, Anthony's Beehive, they supposedly are biodegradable straws over time. I don't know if that to be in the sunlight or what. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but they supposedly will biodegrade. And so I don't know how that works. They look just like any other straw to me, but that's one of the things that
Can you imagine the paper straw market for honeys? There is nothing worse than getting a drink from somewhere and you go to take a swig off at Rascal and it's all stuck up on your face and the straw stuck to your lips and your tongue. You're thinking, what in the world is this? Can you imagine the honey straw market for paper straws? And I'm all for doing the best that we can with the environment that we're living in. But when it comes to packaging and food products, if you take a real hard look, some of the things that we are burning up for plastic and use, we could probably do better for sure. But that's just an unfortunate reality that we're living in.
I didn't mean to open a can of worms with that, but I get,
Way to go, Bruce.
I get so
Plastic
many
jar
comments
versus
about
glass jars.
people
Go.
just thinking I'm the devil because I use plastic straws. I'm like, I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to use plastic. It's okay.
So you're telling me that as I'm talking into my plastic microphone,
I know,
drinking out of my plastic cup.
That's like me saying, we only support and believe in glass honey jars. Don't pay no mind to the plastic housing and cabling and microphones and headphones and computers and every. Yeah, we got to be. We got to practice what we preach here.
But Carol put something here as well. She said, "Thanks, I appreciate it. It looked fun, but very tedious. There was a big debate on how the price and all the factors involved." So yeah, Carol, it's just something you have to figure out what your market can withstand. Some people I've heard that around here in gas stations, I've heard people, they sell them for $2 to $3 a piece at gas stations.
Wow.
That's way more than what I think I could sell them for. But at the dollar, my price range seems to be pretty good, and I sell most of them 50 for minimum 50 for $20 for 50. And with that big machine, we're talking 10 minutes to make $20. You know what I mean? It really is worth it if you have the market for it. So also I think the second part of that question, Carol, I don't know I think it was part of your question is how do you price your honey? I don't know if it's just the honey straws, but that's another, rabbit hole we could go down. Have to come with Clorox light. Steve's awesome. anyway,
Don't you love the plastic? Some good comments there. The cardboard paper straws wrapped in plastic. Yeah,
paper straws come in plastic wrap.
I mean,
Anyway, another rabbit hole we go down is honey pricing in general. I hesitate to tell what I do for my pricing because I think I sell a little too cheap, and I know that is something that you might be able to sell a pound of honey for $20 in some towns, and you might be able to get it for $7 or $8 in other areas. And so you just got to find out what your market withstands and figure out how much you need to make on it, and make sure you price it where it's a good value to you and to your customers. And so that's just my opinion on that. I sell mine a little cheaper than I probably should, but I'd usually have quite a bit to move, and so I'm pretty much in the market in this area. Maybe I'm on the low to mid end of the market here in this area, but you just got to see what is happening in your area. I see people on forums and stuff always asking, how should I price my honey? I'm like, you just got to look and see what's going on in your area. Now, how would you seal a paper straw? That's a very good question.
But hang on one second. I already have an answer. Gorilla glue.
Boy, that would talking about tedious. That would take a while.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. You'd use some kind of hard candy. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Or wax. Why don't you just dip them in wax?
You could do that.
Seal it in wax.
Brian, any other questions that we haven't addressed here?
Stan had a question earlier. He said for the smart folks on here. So I'm just
wrong show, Stan.
I'm going to stay quiet. When using oxalic vape, what is the minimal time you have to wait before you open things up? The standard has usually been around 10 minutes. I open in 2. I believe. I think what it tells you is 10. If you ask me how long I wait, it varies on how much time I have in the day. So,
Bruce, how about you? How much time do you wait before you unseal a colony after an OA treatment?
I don't seal them. I just stick it in there, and it just comes out the top, comes out the front, comes out the sides, and then I move on. And I know you probably should throw a rag or seal it up. That's how you're really supposed to do it, but I haven't had a, it seems to work just fine the way I do it. I've on my pallets, I do it 2 different ways. I've started doing it a little different. I was doing it just in the front, but I've started actually, my pellets have a little gap in the back, I guess for extra drainage or whatever to run off, just like on the outside of the pallet, you got the little rim around the pallet where the hive sits on there. And right on the outside of the pallet on the outside, there's a little gap right at the back where the backboard joins the sideboard. And I stick it right in there on the side. It's only about maybe quarter to a half inch. And then it just, that really it shoots in there, and then it just goes up in the hive, and then a little bit, some of it comes out the front. But that cool. I think I waste less that way of the vapor. Most of it seems to, I get a little better coverage, I think, that way. But I've done it both ways, in the front and the sides. I used to use rags, but I don't worry too much about that. So I don't know. What about you, Greg?
Yes. It really depends. There's a lot of when we're treating nuke boxes that have entrance dials. I mean, we're zapping them. We're using an instant vape or the Lorob unit with either a plastic insulator or a piece of cork. to go in those plastic dials, and I'm in and I'm out, moving on to the next one. On our anything that might be on a solid bottom board with a full entrance, those ones I do tend to put a blue shop towels over, and I'm just, I keep an empty gesture nuke just to hold those blue towels, and I reuse them over and over and over again. On my 4-way pallets, if I can, it takes you a little bit extra time, but I do try to get in there and keep those entrances closed off for. I'm probably somewhere close to Stan. It's probably 3 to 5 minutes. It's not 10. And what I did find is whether I don't know that you could justify not closing them off because of this, but I do find that the instant vape, it just puts out an enormous amount of product as compared to any other vaporizer that we've used in the past. So I feel like, and maybe it's poor thinking, but that extra cloud that it does create, I feel like it is circulating and wafting through a little longer. So I think maybe you potentially could get by, even though you're probably not supposed to. Um, Here's what I will say. Regardless of the interval that I'm using, or that I have the colonies closed off, the best thing to do is mite washes. And are your colonies healthy? Is it actually working? If so, then keep doing what you're doing. But if you feel like you need to fine tune it or get a little bit higher of a knockdown, then I would think closing them up would obviously have more effect. But the question really remains, there's always a question to the question. The question that I have for Stan, maybe you can pose it to the Texas Friendly Beekeeping Group, is how long does it take oxalic acid to act, react, or what is the open and working time for it on mites? How long does it take before the acid's no longer effective inside of the colony? Whatever that is, I would think, in my mind, makes sense for the timeline to keep the colony closed up so that we've got vapor penetrating all the nooks and crannies like it should. If the 10 minutes closed up time is based on what? Volume of OA, grams of OA. You can take let's say we were going back in time and we were using the blue caps on the Lorobi's units that flushed off as a 5-gram dose. I really do feel like there's a difference between that 5-gram dose and the 4-gram dose on the instant vape. I do feel like I'm getting more of a cloud off the instant vape than I am off any other models. So it's one question leads to the next. What is the 10-minute rule for? Is that based on the volume of the cloud? Because I think there's a difference in the volume of the cloud versus the gram dosage that's applied. So my mind is whatever time it takes, whatever the efficacy time for the treatment is in the colony, to me, that makes sense. Probably that's ideally best practice would have the colony close up for that interval. So you're getting the most effective dose of the OA.
This leads to another question. Treating Apame hives with the instant vape or with the oxalic acid vaporizer. And I found something that works pretty well. Rob does sell an adapter. You can put on that instant vape on the tip and put it in there in the regular holes, the entrance and the for the bees. But what I did, I've started doing this and it works well. But you have to make sure you use a screwdriver. I just go into the dial up on the deep box and I open it up if it's not already open. Stick a screwdriver in there and I make sure the screwdriver goes in and pry and make sure there's no frames right there or propolis right there. And then I just put the tip right there and hold it up against that, and it works well. And I don't risk melting any plastic. The little adapter works okay, but that's worked really well for me too. Yeah. That's how I do it. And so just open the dial up, take a screwdriver, pry them up, and make sure you got good. You can stick that thing in and out really easily. And then if you put the instant vape or the probably the Lorobi's one will work too. The other one, I think it would probably work well too. The thing about the instant vape is it's got a little, you can put it right up against the colony. It's got a little rim around it, so you can put it right there. I'm not sure if you could do that with the regular one that easily, but just a couple of ideas there. That's kind of what, I do, and I've done that. I should probably use a towel, but it seems to be working fine for me the way I do it, and I think it gets a pretty good coverage doing it the way I do it. But I do think the rag, sealing it up is probably a better idea.
Steve Amos had a good follow-up comment. The OAV has less than 48 hours, according to a study that he saw the other day. So here's the thing about that. Is, again, we probably need to get off it because we spend all night. So you're taking the oxalic acid crystal, you're getting it hot, and it goes from a solid to a liquid, and then the liquid goes to vapor, I guess is gas, maybe the correct term. When it does that act in doing all that, what we're seeing is a little bit how a different a variance in how much of a cloud there is as it goes through that process. The residue that's left behind in the colony, I think, would be the working time of the treatment. Okay, so the oxalic acid residue in a colony may have a working time of up to 48 hours, of which there's no more effect. I'd be surprised if it's that long. Where you have the open time is how long is actually going to be inside of the colony while the equipment is operating, and how much vapor is actually circulating throughout the colony. I think those are probably two separate things. So again, good questions end up with more questions. So thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
Hey, talking about the instant vape, J-Mom, who won an instant vape, what oil to use? And then she also had, let me see here. It was on the applicator, so the plunger. You use an oil on there?
On that O-ring around that plunger, I think you can use like a food grade oil you can put on top of there. Rob, if you're listening, throw the comment out there, because Rob was out here for a learning yard, and he looked at me and he said, "Man, you really need to oil this thing." And I said, "Oh, do I?"
Yeah, I haven't oiled mine. I didn't know I needed to oil mine.
But I think I'd imagine you could put like a mineral oil or a food grade rubber vegetable oil. I think that would be fine. Is there some heat? I'm sure, but there's no kind of heat where you're going to cause any kind of a problem. I mean, vegetable oil, PAM spray, I think any of that stuff would probably work just fine. The main thing is to get that ring lubricated so it slides and seals.
I didn't know that you had to.
What I found is when mine starts to stop up or the spring isn't working as well, I just rinse it off really good with water, and then it seems to go right back like it's brand new. Works great. So,
Redfish says he uses olive oil. Yeah, I think in my mind, I can't see where I would rather use something like that than use like a 5-in-1 or,
I tell you what, I would probably go with like some Tuscan herb extra virgin olive oil.
Ah, delicious.
Versus
an Italian blend.
Yes, versus Noah here that he's doing some 10W30.
So you wouldn't do 10W30? That's what I was thinking. Definitely.
How about some zero weight oil for the front differential? Put that in there. Oof.
Yeah. Huh. I wonder if you could use ProSweet. It's already inverted.
You try that and let me know how it works for you. That's I'm going to pass on that one.
Oh my. Stay focused. Stay focused.
I think we're almost through the questions, aren't we?
What else we got? Anything else, Brian? Any other questions?
Steve had a question on here, and this is it's an experiment for Fred Dunn. That's all I'm going to say.
Steve says, I'm late, so you may have covered this, but is winter bee production triggered by day length, temps, or something else? Brian, what's your gut reaction?
This is just my very first thought, and I am disclaimer. I am not an educated person on this, so this is just my guess. But my thought is that so for right now we're getting into September, okay? Our colonies, are preparing to lay up their winter brood. So my thought is that it would have to deal with length of sunlight, that it would also deal with temps. I would think it would be both of those factors. Now, if there's some other factor in there that comes into play,
There's one more factor.
if it deals with resources, if they're looking at all of those together to say, hey, we're in the fall and we need to prepare ourselves for the winter, I don't know. That's just my gut is the first two of what he said.
I think a lot has to do. Sometimes I think the answer, if you've ever torn something apart, well, how do you reassemble it? Well, in the reverse direction of tearing it apart. I think the same thing with the bees is what triggers them to start brood production. Well, we get into the equinox, and we start slowly gaining solar exposure, slightly heat, but they don't really like heavy spring brood until they've got some pollen, nectar, and that solar exposure. So in my mind, for the fall time, what I've noticed them, if we back it up a step, when we see them brooding down, when they brood down, the brood that they're making are the winter bees. What's causing those bees to brood down for us? It's the lack of pollen and nectar. It's the days are getting shorter. It's getting cooler, and everything is so beautiful. When you really think about it, there's such a beautiful dance. When you even look at anything, why are the bees doing this? Why are the bees doing that? In my mind, when you look at why are the bees this specific question, what is triggering the winter bee production? I think it's a beautiful dance of everything being in tune to moisture, sun, and those temperatures, what that's doing to the ground temp, the water reservoirs, what the plants are doing, how they're reacting, the pollen, the nectar, everything is then playing off of that. And I think that's what's causing the bees to. Reason I say that is, you guys, I don't know if it happened to Bruce. I don't know if it happened to Brian, but you do know what happened here in East Central Ohio, the end of September through mid-October. Did you see anything extremely unusual that you can remember, Brian?
Say that again.
In East Central Ohio, the end of September through mid-October, we had a resurgence of brood rearing, where everything was kind of closing back off, and then they picked back up again. And if you look back at the weather, we hit about a 2 or 3 week stretch where it got warm again. Clover started popping back up again. Weird dandelion flushes started to pop back up again. The bees actually started to make a little bit more brood, and I think that they were triggered because of now there's a little bit more warmth. There was a little bit more coming in. They already had some reserves inside the colony, and so they took advantage of that and started to kind of brood up a little bit. So it's beautiful when you think about it. On what the bees are doing is just reactionary to the environment and what the temperatures and all the plants and everything's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just everything. I think, because the bees they just respond. Whatever's going on in the environment, they just kind of respond. I think I think it has to do with just, it's a perfect symphony. Mother Nature knows what she's doing, and who really knows? But the bees, they've got it. They key on all those environmental factors: food supply, sunlight, temperature, water availability. So many things they look at, and I think that they just somehow know when to stimulate and when to back off. They just kind of know that. And when we get in trouble is if there is I think like a sudden change and it just stays that way. For example, you got a fair amount of rain, you got flowers blooming everywhere, and everything's good, and they build way up, and then all of a sudden you have 6 weeks of nothing but dearth, super high heat, and then that can really mess them up, I think, with the population. Or same thing maybe in the wintertime, or maybe a late freeze where they've started building up, and then you have 2 weeks of freezing temperatures, those kind of things I think can really mess them up. And that happens a lot, I think, in the springtime especially. That's one thing we have issues with here, and I think you guys have had some of that up there too, where the bees think they're coming out of winter, and then all of a sudden, bam, there's a dearth, or there's several days of cold, and it just messes them up, and then you can get in trouble with starvation and things like that. But the bees manage it pretty good if everything's going in a fairly consistent pattern. They seem to really, and they anticipate things. It's kind of weird how they seem to be able to do that pretty well. It's kind of crazy, but it's just the perfect symphony, and even in the bad years of weather, Mother Nature knows what she's doing. You know, who knows what the impact of a lot of rain this year will have 2 years down the road. You just don't know. You know, it might end up being a big dearth this year. It'll actually be a benefit 2 years down the road. So you just never know. We look at the now and the here and now, but who knows what's going to happen in the future. I getting into some other, kind of down a rabbit hole here. We hear about all the climate change and stuff like that, but there's a homeostasis that the earth tries to maintain. And I don't know if you guys have noticed it. It seems like the hottest summers, we have the coldest winters. Does that seem that way to you guys? And then if you have a mild winter, you'll have a mild summer. It seems like that's kind of what happens. The earth is always trying to maintain its core environmental factors. And so it's pretty cool how the earth just knows what it's doing. We really don't, but the earth does.
It's funny that you say that, because I sat on the phone the other day with Matt, Homestead Engraving Matt, and just about something that, you guys know what I'm having done for the 16th. We were just chatting about different things, and he had said he actually sat with a neighbor of his, went over with the Farmer's Almanac, and they were going through and looking at the weather patterns and things like that, as far as like the summers being hot and, the different patterns. And he said, if you go and you look up in his area of the country, he said it's almost, for what's taken place in the last like 2 or 3 years, because they've had a drought up around him and really warm summers. Like the other day, they were above 100 up in Minnesota. And he said it's almost a mirror of, I think he said it's like 90 years ago. He said there were the same exact. So if you look, now the temps weren't identical, but the same similar patterns. You had this 2 or 3 year drought. And then he said this winter, and he said they're actually predicting it on the news. They're saying that it's going to be a heavy snow for as far as the winter. And my comment to him, and I don't want to start this conversation, but my comment, I said, so Matt, what you're telling me, I said, if this happened 90 years ago in Minnesota, I said, this isn't global warming. And I'm not, I didn't say that. So, but
how dare you, Brian? How dare you?
Interesting. It's interesting. So,
hey, there was another question from Russell Koopman right there. I don't know if you saw it come in about the bees when applying miticides. It's just barely. Important to have almost all the bees in the hive when applying miticides. What do y'all think? I assume he's talking primarily about oxalic acid vapor, because most of them, if they're on there for a few days, the bees are in and out, and they will be in there during part of that time.
Yeah.
But
I think. What do you think, Bruce?
Well, I think in an ideal world, I think it would be good if you could treat your bees like when the bees are all home early in the morning or in the evening time. But the reality is it's very difficult to do that. So if you're going to be hitting them a few times, especially with like OAV, you just may miss some of them. And so if I treat whenever I can, if it's in the middle of the day, if it's, in the evening time or in the morning. Now it's been so hot, the ones I've been treating lately with the OAV, the colonies that a few of them I've been treating with that, hitting them quite often, just trying to see if I can keep the phoretic mites off of them. But I just go out in the morning because it's been so dang hot in the afternoon. But I think it probably helps with the OAV to do it when most of the bees are home, but I don't know that it's super critical.
Can I ask a silly question to the question? So I was just thinking, okay, so why would that matter? Well, if you had your mite population on your foragers,
that's true.
That could be a problem. But if I'm just, if I'm dead wrong, that's okay. I've got thick skin and broad shoulders. But in my mind, if my mite population has developed to the point to where the foragers are now have hitchhikers, that puts this population and the overall health picture of this colony and at such a disadvantage that I don't even think I would be worried about it one bit, because I don't know that OA would have been the right tool to begin with. In my mind, we're going to find the mites are going to be on drones or on nurse bees, And if you have a continual phase where the mites are choosing the older bees to do it, I mean, yes, that's going to
That's true.
happen for sure. 100%. You know, you're going to have them on foragers, but if that's a big determining factor, boy, I'd be interested in actually testing that and seeing um, how that actually pans out. But like Bruce said, you know, if we're going out to a yard of 48 to treat with an instant vape, you know, and we're at 40 seconds a colony, you know, we're going to get done in an hour or less. And so if we're out at 6:30 in the morning, we're done by 7:30. You know, so dusk. I like dusk personally, just because now I'm already out in the bee yard a little earlier. That's done. I can get working bees and doing other stuff. But if I have to wait until dawn, for me, I usually don't even go get back to the house until dark 30 for dinner. Last thing I want to be doing is piggybacking a treatment on a bunch of colonies right before I got to go home too. So I personally like dusk, but I don't know. I'm squirrel dogging because now I'm thinking, well, when would it matter? It would matter if the foragers or have a huge mite population. Well, why would foragers have a huge mite population? Well, it would be because the mites are jumping from the initial host to now a secondary host, and that opens up a whole can of worms. I could be wrong on that.
Greg, you mean morning or evening?
Morning.
You prefer morning? Okay.
What did I say? Dusk? I meant dawn.
You said dusk.
No, not dusk.
You meant dawn. Yeah, you said opposite. I think you did.
But you're
It's
right.
okay. It's getting late, guys. I know you guys are exhausted.
I can't even tell which one's dusk or dawn right now.
All right.
Wow. Look at this.
Greg is following the honeybee rabbit. You know, you absolutely, when you take the time to actually look at something from all angles, there's not a single one of us who pretend to be experts. Not a single one of us is a self-proclaimed expert in the field of beekeeping. When you are comfortable in your own skin and knowing that you don't know anything about this, and that when you are looking to the bees and you see something, you start chasing all the different angles of what the thing could be. I don't know how you can help not going down rabbit holes. One thing leads to another thing, and it's just a big, beautiful dance of, at the end of the day, you know. So what do we know at the end of this bee chat, where it's an hour and 39 minutes, 21 seconds in? Hopefully, folks felt like they picked up a gold nugget here of something. If not, we had fun hanging out with you. We hope you did too. At the end of the day, I think you got to be careful. Taking advice from those who are a matter of fact. This is absolute. This is the gospel truth when it comes to bees, because I think you got to be careful because there are no absolutes and there are so many variables, and you can't help but chase ideas and go round and round and round and see where you end up. But yeah. So, anyways, I'm about. I'm running on fumes here, fellas. So I'm having conversations with myself about the conversation that I just had there. So what do you say we probably wrap this thing up so we're not another 2.5 hour bee chat again?
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. What Bruce, what do you got coming up? What's now hang on one second. Before you start answering that, let me just, and I hate to interrupt you there, but what do you have coming up within the next week to possibly 10 days?
I'm going to be in Ohio. I'm going to be Ohioan.
He's slumming it. He is slumming it.
Actually, next Thursday night, going to be going up to the Birmingham, Shelby County area. And Brian Lee up there is, I think he's the president of the Bee Club, president or vice president of the Bee Club. And he's invited me to come and speak up there. So if you happen to be in the Shelby County, Alabama area, it's right up by Birmingham, you can come on over. Just I don't know exactly where it is yet, but I'll be there. So you can contact Brian Lee on Facebook, just reach out to him or whatever, and maybe he can let you know where that is. And but then I'm going to be going up to Ohio for the Learning Yard, our event coming up, the field day on the 16th. And that'll be fun. And as far as the bees go, this weekend I plan to just get up and up to Ozark and just kind of go around the different bee yards and see what's happening and see what kind of, I plan on doing that. I'm usually off on Fridays. I work Monday through Thursday. I'm off on Fridays and Saturdays. And of course Sundays. And so Friday I plan to go up and kind of assess. And then if I need to do any type of manipulations or feeding or anything, I plan to do that Saturday if I can. So, and then it'll be 2 weeks until I get in them again because I'm going to be up there. And later in the month, hoping to get a hold of a few queens and maybe just replace some weak ones, or do some just a few splits here or there. But it's getting pretty late, so we're just going to have to figure that out here in a few weeks. But pretty much trying to get them tucked in, ready for winter, and just hope everything goes well through the winter and then come out next spring. I'm also taking some time to reassess my goals for next year, and both with the bees, the YouTube, and just kind of life in general. So I'm working on that. This is a good time of year to do that, because we have started next year in the beekeeping world. And so now we got to kind of figure out where we're at with equipment, figure out what our needs are, and just get these bees ready. That's kind of where I'm at right now.
Nice.
How about you guys?
Well, Greg's always good at the final word. So I guess I'll jump in and then, turn it over to Greg so he can do the final. But yeah, I think I have my main apiary about squared away. I got to clean up a few things that people will find out what I'm cleaning up tomorrow. But things are looking good. I'll probably ride this fall flow. And then once that's done, I already have my strips are actually sitting on, my workbench that's over in my honey house. So as soon as the supers come off, I'll literally pull those and drop strips, probably around the same exact time, and, get feed. And it's just getting into that final prep for the winter. So it's just getting so close to, almost the ending of the season. It's hard to believe that we're here in September already, but yeah, that's about what I've got going. So I do have to tomorrow. I think the only hives that I'm going to touch tomorrow are going to be the ones at the farmer's place. I just need to check those. I haven't. Those colonies over there are almost like the top bar hive at Greg's place, because I still treat them like, the same exact time like I do everything else. But as far as any other inspections, because they are at the farmer's place, I can't get over there that often. I got to drive over, pick up my stuff, and then go there. So it's difficult for me with my schedule. I think I've done 2 inspections on those colonies all year. They're monsters of colonies. They're some of my highest producing colonies. So I need to check those tomorrow and then get more supers on those and just make sure they're not getting bound up. But yeah, it's fun times, So, and looking forward to seeing you next week, Bruce.
It's gonna be fun. Look forward to it.
Man, it's going to be so awesome. So yeah, really looking forward to that. So, Mr. Burns.
Well, I feel like we're at the time of the season where it is the epitome of a bittersweet symphony. You're cleaning things up, knocking things down, getting all the boxes that you used up to make nukes or to make queens, or you downsized or you had dead outs. You're getting all that cleaned up. And we had Jackie and Jeremy from the Sleepy Hollow Homestead came all the way out from West Virginia, and hopefully we'll get that video out sometime this fall. But I found myself almost making excuses for how few colonies there are here. I mean, there's a bunch, but it feels like a few, because when you go down the ridge, and hopefully I'll have it all cleaned up by the time we have the field day, but there are just pallets staged down the ridges where they used to be mating nukes. They used to be nukes that were growing out. They were mating boxes. They were all these things. And as the season progresses, those colonies meet a jester box. They go down the road, or the queen gets caged and goes down the road. And eventually, after so many of those cycles, everything gets consolidated. Then you've got empty equipment. Then the empty equipment is consolidated onto skids out in the yard to get wrapped up and moved into a building or under a roof. And it's kind of bittersweet, because there's a certain feeling and an energy when you are just surrounded by colonies everywhere that I absolutely love. And then this is the time of year where you look around and you're just feeling like, you kind of feel like you're missing some of your buddies. It's shrinking and consolidating, and there's holes here and there's holes there. And that's all kind of part of it. But the reason I say all that is we work so hard to build and to build and to build and to build and to build. We were talking about the just Earth having a balance, to and fro, ebb and flow, this and that. It's just the same thing happens in the bee yard too. As you're working through the fall and you're doing the best you can for the bees and you're keeping them clean, keeping them fed, getting them to the right size colony for wintertime, take a little bit of time to just stand back and look and appreciate where you are right now in your journey with beekeeping, because it wasn't that long ago when every single one of us were going into the winter for the very first time. And I want you to just spend your homework for everybody listening. Try to go back to what it was like mentally when you were trying to overwinter for your very first season, all the fear and the stress and the worry and the anxiety. And take a minute to just appreciate how much further down that road you are now than you were then. And even though this might not have been the perfect season for you and everything didn't go the way that you wanted it to go, and there was things that you want to do better, I think what's interesting is I don't think that we have a memory that is the intent of our memory is not to rehash all those things over and over and over again. I think the intent of the memory is to consolidate and learn the lessons from that, and then take that piece of information and apply it as we move forward. So take time to appreciate how far you've come, where you're at. Try to take mental note of the things that you did this year. Take the time right now while you can still look to the yard to see, make those notes, and then use it as a learning opportunity moving forward, not just for yourself, but for your peers, your friends, your folks at the bee club. Share your experience with folks. And I think, like the honeybee is the hive, we're better together. And I think there's so much that we can all learn. I'm looking forward to having Bruce and Brian. You know, I get to see him here all the time on the banner every day I walk into the shop here. It'll be great to have the three of us live. We'll have to get the selfie of all of us in front of that thing again here in the shop.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to that private event, the StreamTeam Field Day and Creator Convergence. They're going to see a lot of video coming out on that later. It's going to be a lot of fun, and so. It's a way that we can say thank you to the folks that have supported Nature's Image Farm. If you bought your packages or nukes, we'd love to have you here and be a part of this. There's going to be so many great content creators, manufacturers of all these products here, where we can talk, we can ask questions, we can have that open conversation and that dialogue with everybody, have fun doing it. And Brian even has some really cool commemorative hive tools made just for the occasion. There won't be enough for everybody right now, but it's going to be pretty cool to get some of those out. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm really looking forward to that. It's a time of year where there is no break. There just is no break. Once we get the bees wrapped up and cleaned up and all the boxes pulled and on skids and everything that's going to winter here or other yards ready to go, that's not it. Now we get full on into wax dipping and box building and all the winter prep stuff. We're getting ready. Looking forward to seeing everybody, the StreamTeam, all of our familiar faces and friends that we usually see at the bee conferences every single year. Looking forward to seeing everybody January 4th through 6th at the North American Honeybee Expo in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm not sure what the website is, but if you put in North American Honeybee Expo in a Google search, I'm sure you'll get to where you can get your tickets. Last time we heard from Cayman, there was already over 2,000 tickets sold, which sounds like they've already broke the records from the past conferences that Cayman has put on. So really looking forward to seeing the conference that we all knew Cayman to put on, how it's exploded into this new conference, the North American Honeybee Expo. Hope to see everybody there. I know we're going to have a lot of fun. Bruce and Brian will be there. Nature's Image will be there. You can go to their website, check out all the vendors who will be there, everyone that you would expect and are really excited to see will be there. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Other than that, fellas, I could go on all night about the things that I've learned about just life and myself this week, but more to come. Next Wednesday will be on Bruce's channel. right? Yep, 8 p.m. Eastern on the Bruce's Bees YouTube channel. From all of us here at the Stream Team Beekeeping Chat, we want to thank everyone for spending time with us tonight. We appreciate all the comments. We love it when you guys share these videos out, get this message out to folks. We appreciate your friendship, your collaboration, and as always, we want to remind you to be the lighthouse and be the change you want to see in this world. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.